Today I'd like to share a tip on how you can move your shoulder a little differently. A lot of us end up with shoulder problems, rotator cuff injuries, shoulder impingement, and a large part of that is because we just don't actually move our shoulder joint very often. So I'm going to show you how to move at the shoulder joint and how to tell whether it's your shoulder joint or your scapula doing this particular motion. So if you take your right arm, reach out in front of you, take a look at your elbow pit. It can be the same as your palm. You're facing upwards with your elbow pit and your palm. Put your other hand on your shoulder, kind of where you would wear a shoulder pad, and see if you can turn your arm so that your elbow pit faces in and faces up. And if your shoulder's anything like mine, maybe you'll get some really good crunching and clicking happening here. Can you feel under your left hand how there's some rotation happening here? That's a good thing to feel. That is your upper arm bone rotating in the joint. So here we're using the actual shoulder joint, otherwise known as the glenohumeral joint, and this is the bit that doesn't get used very often because in daily life we don't often break it up from what's happening with the scapula or the shoulder blade. So if you were using your shoulder blade for this movement, what you'd be doing is you'd be scooping over, and can you see how my whole shoulder kind of comes over? My traps get really big. Frankly, this is how I pour my morning coffee. I reach over, and I would bet money that most of us out there are doing this big scapular movement. Most of the time we want to kind of dump something down, or maybe even when we're on the computer all the time. So what you want to do now is move your free hand, feel that kind of shoulder blade, and you're going to see, can you turn your arm like we did at the start without feeling your whole shoulder blade come along for the ride? And just for fun, try helping your shoulder blade come along for the ride. Really like reach your whole shoulder over like you're pouring out an awesome cup of coffee. Boom. And now see, can you stabilize that and just move at your glenohumeral joint? Learning how to externally rotate at your glenohumeral joint will, like I said, help you load and move the tissues of your shoulder yourself a little bit more specifically. That'll bring some healthy movement inputs into them. And it's a really useful movement skill to build on because you're going to be able to use that to create more effective exercises for your upper body. So that's external rotation at the glenohumeral joint versus the whole scapula coming along for the ride. Okay, so that's a really fun little shoulder exercise, but how do you apply it in actual real life? First of all, just doing the exercise and being able to break up the motion is useful. You can try doing that a few times until you feel like you get it. And maybe that'll take you 10 times, maybe it'll take you 40 times, like whatever it takes, just until you kind of really feel like you understand that type of rotation. You can apply it in your daily life by thinking about activities where you use your arms and thinking about applying some rotation at the shoulders to them. So the most obvious one is typing. If you're able to externally rotate your shoulders while you type, then that's going to be really great for your shoulders. But maybe you could even think about when you pour your coffee, can you start by externally rotating your shoulders before you move into that scapula? So you can try to kind of practice using that glenohumeral joint rotation in anything where you're kind of rotating with your arm, and just start with the shoulder isolation and then go for it if you need to get your job done. So there's no particular prescription for this exercise. You just want to understand how to break up those movements and then see if you can break up those movements from time to time in your daily life so that you're creating kind of a more nutritious movement profile in your day-to-day movements. So if you enjoyed this tip and feel like it's going to be useful for you, I do share a lot of stuff. I think my best work goes to my mailing list, so I recommend joining it. You can jump on there from my website, which is petrafishermovement.com. I've got a really awesome little Fix Your Feet boot camp you can pick up at the same time that I highly recommend for anyone who has feet. And I definitely look forward to having you in my community.